We need to talk about a major ruling just handed down by the United States Supreme Court, a unanimous 9-0 decision that directly impacts how law enforcement can use force under the Fourth Amendment. This ruling is especially important for gun owners and anyone concerned about constitutional protections during encounters with police. At the heart of this decision is the question, when does excessive force by police violate a person's Fourth Amendment rights? The Fourth Amendment, as you may know, protects against unreasonable searches and seizures. But when law enforcement uses force, especially deadly force, how should the courts evaluate whether that force was justified? This case, Barnes v. Felix, is now setting a new precedent, and it changes the way courts must analyze excessive force claims going forward. Why should this matter to you? Because we've seen far too many stories, some caught on video, where law-abiding gun owners or civilians are involved in tense situations with police, and the outcome turns deadly. Until now, courts in some jurisdictions only looked at the precise moment when the officer pulled the trigger, ignoring everything that led up to that point. That meant police could escalate a situation, create the danger themselves, and still be justified in using deadly force, as long as they claimed they felt threatened at that final moment. The Supreme Court just changed that. In this new ruling, the justices unanimously rejected that narrow approach. They made it clear, courts must consider the full context, including the officer's actions leading up to the use of force. This is a massive win for constitutional rights, and it strengthens protections under the Fourth Amendment for everyone, especially in police encounters that escalate quickly. This case eventually reached the United States Supreme Court, where the central issue became clear. Should courts evaluate police use of force using the moment of threat doctrine, or is there a more appropriate standard under the Fourth Amendment? In a unanimous decision, the Supreme Court ruled that claims of excessive force during an arrest or stop must be assessed under the Fourth Amendment. That means the force used by officers must be objectively reasonable, not based on hindsight, but from the perspective of a reasonable officer on the scene at the time of the incident. To determine whether that force was reasonable, the court emphasized the importance of looking at the totality of the circumstances. In other words, courts can't just focus on the split second when force is used. Instead, they must consider all relevant facts surrounding the event, what led up to it, what happened during it, and how the entire situation unfolded. The court firmly rejected the narrower moment of threat approach that had been used by some lower courts. However, the justices stopped short of addressing one important question: whether or how an officer's own decisions that contribute to creating a dangerous situation should factor into the reasonableness analysis. For example, in this case, Officer Felix jumped onto the ledge of a moving car, a decision that may have escalated the danger. But the court said that issue wasn't properly presented for review in this case, so it's something the lower courts will now have to address. So to summarize the court's main conclusion, they've made it clear that lower courts must take a broader view. They're now required to assess the full scope of an incident, before and during the use of force, to determine whether a Fourth Amendment violation occurred. This shifts the standard significantly and demands a more thoughtful and complete evaluation of police conduct. Now, there was also a concurring opinion written by Justice Kavanaugh, which was joined by Justices Thomas, Barrett, and Alito. In their concurrence, these justices emphasized how dangerous traffic stops can be for law enforcement officers. They pointed out that many officer fatalities occur during traffic stops, which are often unpredictable and tense. They also highlighted the reality that when a driver flees, as Barnes did in this case, it places officers in a difficult position. According to the concurrence, officers often have very limited options in those moments, and both public safety and officer safety can be at serious risk. Because of this, they agreed that it's essential for courts to evaluate the entire interaction, not just a single moment. The concurring justices reiterated that, under existing legal precedent, courts must carefully balance the nature and degree of force used against the governmental interests involved, such as protecting officers, maintaining public safety, and enforcing the law. So, to summarize the Supreme Court's decision, the justices made it clear that courts can no longer limit their evaluation to only the immediate moment when force is used. Instead, they must consider the broader picture, the totality of the circumstances, including everything leading up to and during the incident. This is a significant shift in how excessive force claims will be analyzed moving forward. Following this ruling, the Supreme Court issued a mandate sending the case back to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. That means the lower court must now take a second look at the case, but this time using the standard laid out by the Supreme Court. Importantly, this doesn't necessarily mean the Fifth Circuit will rule against Officer Felix. They might still find that his use of force was reasonable under the new framework. But they are now required to examine all relevant details before and during the event to determine whether the officer's actions were indeed in line with Fourth Amendment protections. It's also worth noting that the Supreme Court deliberately avoided addressing one key issue: whether an officer's own behavior or decisions that lead to a dangerous situation should factor into determining whether the use of force was reasonable. That part of the analysis was not resolved in this ruling. However, if that argument is raised again, it will now fall to the Fifth Circuit to consider whether Officer Felix contributed to the danger in a way that would undermine the reasonableness of his actions. This case holds major implications for all Americans, especially when it comes to protecting their Fourth Amendment rights. For law-abiding gun owners, the ruling is particularly important. In recent years, we've seen tragic and controversial incidents where legal gun owners were misidentified as threats and harmed or even killed by law enforcement. This ruling could offer stronger legal protections in such cases. With the Supreme Court now requiring a broader review of all the facts surrounding an encounter, not just the split-second moment of confrontation, individuals may have a better chance of holding officers accountable when force is used unreasonably. This unanimous 9-0 decision sends a strong message. The court ruled in favor of the individual in this case and emphasized that a full, fair, and comprehensive review is essential when evaluating alleged violations of constitutional rights. The case now heads back to the Fifth Circuit for a new analysis based on this standard. If you've made it this far into the video, first of all, thank you. That tells me you care deeply about your rights, your community, and how the law affects everyday people. These Supreme Court rulings might seem distant or technical, but they have real consequences for your family, your neighbors, and anyone who values the Constitution and the freedoms it's meant to protect. If you found value in this breakdown, or if you learned something new today, I encourage you to hit the like button. It helps push this video out to more people who need to hear this, especially in a time when misinformation is everywhere, and important legal updates like this often get buried. And if you're someone who believes in holding government agencies accountable, who wants clear, straightforward analysis without political spin, and who supports independent voices trying to make sense of complex issues, then please consider subscribing to this channel. That one small action helps the channel grow and gives me the opportunity to continue covering important stories the mainstream often overlooks or oversimplifies. Also, I'd love to hear your perspective. What do you think about this ruling? Do you believe the courts should take into account how a situation began, not just how it ended? Leave a comment below and let's have a real conversation. Your insight could help someone else see the bigger picture, or it might raise a question we can explore in a future video. And if you want to go even further, share this video with a friend, a fellow gun owner, or anyone who cares about civil liberties. Knowledge is power, and the more people understand their rights, the harder it becomes for those rights to be ignored or taken away. Thank you again for being here. Your support makes all the difference. Stay informed, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.